We all have masculine and feminine aspects. We all have a deepest sexual essence. That's what masculine or feminine. And we all have energetic polarities with everything in the world. And if you're a more masculine person and you're in contact with a more feminine person, there's a little bit of an erotic polarity there. And understanding it and feeling it and regulating it to serve the highest good, that's a gift that we all have, because that's what humans do. We take the drives and we turn them into art. And so we take the sex drives, and there's a bunch of them. We turn them into art. And that's our destiny, really.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. This show is about helping you to be healthy and fit in mind, body, and spirit, as well as harmonize your masculine and feminine energy, tap into your intuition, your true source of power, and awaken your authentic self. You are going to love today's show. I love this topic, and of course, my guest. In fact, I loved him so much, I had him back. He was already on the show before, Dr. Keith Witt, who is an integral psychologist with over 40 years of experience. He's an amazing guy. He is a wise man, and I just love this discussion I had with him, because we talk about the erotic polarities. Yes. My favorite topic, the masculine and feminine gender differences and interplay and relationship. Did you know, in fact, there's a difference between energetic polarity and sexual or erotic polarity? Yes, there is. They're both critically important. They basically run all of existence. And it is this interplay between the two that is the key. It really is the key. And hence the mission of this show is harmonizing and knowing how to navigate and having discretion to know the dance between the two polarities. If you enjoy this discussion, and I just can't wait for you to hear how fascinating and wise, and just, we could have gone on for hours, my guest, Dr. Keith Witt, is. You might want to check out his previous appearance on Awakening Aphrodite, which was episode 130. That is a really cool discussion that we have, and I definitely recommend you might want to hit that up as well. So we talk about the erotic polarities in this episode, and how being true to your feminine essence it basically requires you to have a very high priority for your own self-care. So there you go. Just get rid of the guilt. Everyone thinks they feel selfish doing things for themselves and taking care of their needs, but we've got to let go of that, everybody. And I'm speaking to myself primarily. You've got to let go of that, because for you to shine in your feminine radiance, which is, I think, what most of us who identify as feminine really want, it requires you to nourish yourself and your soul. And did you know that by doing all of that, you're actually servicing and nourishing the masculine people in your life? The masculine people need you to do that for yourself, so then you can radiate everything they need you to radiate, which is what then feeds them energetically. It's a fascinating discussion. You're going to love it. That's why I'm like jumping out of my skin to share it with you. Keith also shares with us key characteristics of happy people and what they do, and how having strong energetic and emotional boundaries is critical for the feminine. Wow, critical. I love that point. So important. We talk about how important trust is, empathy, having emotional flexibility, and of course, the difference between the masculine energies and the feminine energies in particular. So you're going to love today's episode. I know I did. And if you want to support it and support me, the best way to do that is subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share it with a friend. I would be super grateful. And you can check out all the products that I love with the discount codes over on my website, amyfournier.com, under the e-store. All right, let's now join Dr. Keith Witt. Welcome back, Keith. We had such a great time on the first recording that we did, and I hope everybody goes and checks out that episode. It was phenomenal. We talked about so many great things, like the whole warrior energy concept and addiction versus dependency, you gave just some really practical, beautiful advice for tips for dealing with the modern anxious world that a lot of us find ourselves in, and of course, a lot more about relationships. So I just want to, again, make sure everyone's aware that there's a lot more Dr. Witt wisdom found over in that episode, and you definitely want to check it out. So welcome back. I'm psyched to jump into the topic today. It's so important and really near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, me too. I'm near and dear to mine also.
Really? Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about the erotic polarities and the masculine and feminine thing. But I'm curious to that comment. So tell us why it's near and dear to your heart, because my goodness, over 40 years of experience, both as a lecturer, author, clinician, you have a lot of things that are probably near and dear to your heart because you have so much expertise and experience and wisdom. So why would this be one that is?
Well, personally, discovering and integrating and expanding and growing as a sexual being has been an organizing principle of my life. I was certified as a sex therapist in 1976. And as the years passed, I grew dissatisfied with the field and kind of gave up on it. It seemed like the Western understanding was just based too much on function. Erections and orgasms and stuff, and not enough on spirit and love and intimacy. And so in the 90s, my wife, Becky, who's brought me most of my best teachers over the years, she's incredible. She gave me a couple of tapes by Deida. Mm-hmm. So I was listening to Deida, and Deida started out as a scientist, became a spiritual teacher, teaching the masculine and feminine. And I liked what he had to say. He was a friend of Ken Wilber, who also blew my mind. And I thought, wow, this radically expanded my understanding of masculine and feminine energies, erotic polarities. And it led me to open up a more comprehensive understanding of how people function and how people thrive and how people get wounded and how people heal. And a lot of what I teach comes from him. In fact, my first book on integral psychotherapy, I have a huge section on erotic polarity and quote him extensively. And I sent it to him after I was done, because I told him the one thing I disagree about with you is that you say, I don't have a system, I just teach this stuff. And I went, excuse me, David, you definitely have a system. Here it is. And he wrote back, you got it, Keith. And I really appreciated that. And I went and studied with him in the Omega Institute. And then started, what that did is it provided a framework for all of the new information that was coming down the line about people, about eroticism, about brain chemistry, about intersubjectivity, about mirror neurons, about vertical development on the psychosocial and the psychosexual line, which is, growth. And interestingly, it dovetailed very much with the research that people were beginning to do about male and female arousal systems and on what characterizes the people in the world that routinely report having magnificent sex. It all fit together. And so that just lit me up. And I was teaching it. I was teaching integrally informed psychotherapy, and an important part of that was teaching about polarity. I was a professor at the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute for a while, and I've taught around the world about relationships and intimacy. And the core of that understanding is, hey, we all have masculine and feminine aspects. We all have a deepest sexual essence that's more masculine or feminine. And we all have energetic polarities with everything in the world. And if you're a more masculine person and you're in contact with a more feminine person, there's a little bit of an erotic polarity there. And understanding it and feeling it and regulating it to serve the highest good, That's a gift that we all have, because that's what humans do. We take the drives and we turn them into art. And so we take the sex drives, and there's a bunch of them. We turn them into art. And that's our destiny, really. And I love that.
And art, meaning?
Meaning something that's not just functional, but is aesthetically beautiful. So let me explain masculine and feminine just for a moment. So the masculine energy is the energy of emptiness. Mm-hmm. It's the energy of presence. Okay? So this is an energy, it's a focused energy. It's an energy, a spiritual practice is emptiness, more to a more masculine person. It's an energy of integrity and purpose. It's an energy of courage and presence, and a deep yearning for the feminine. Okay, that's masculine energy, protective. And it comes straight from 5 million years of evolution from the pair bond, really, where we were programmed to have pair bonds, where the guy was going to protect the woman and the children with his life. We all have some of that, all of us. Okay? That's our masculine aspect. And the feminine is love through the body, is light, is celebration, is spiritual practice of fullness rather than emptiness. Mm-hmm. There's an attraction to masculine presence. You know, a masculine person standing present, looking deeply into the feminine with radical acceptance and love is pleasurable to the feminine energy. The feminine is community. I mean, Deida said that ultimately there's pure emptiness, which is the masculine, and that everything else is all changed. It's the feminine. And we all have a feminine in us also. You know, I studied tap dancing and ballet. I mean, I love to dance, okay, but I also study a lot of martial arts. I love, I got a strong feminine. In the sexual occasion, more often than not, the masculine in the sexual dance is more the leader, and guiding the feminine into deeper pleasure. And masculine people get off on feminine pleasure. You know, that the masculine in us, as we guide our partner to greater pleasure, generally find that pleasurable and erotic. The feminine in us is the follower in the dance, where we can surrender to a trustable presence and allow ourselves to go deeper and deeper and deeper beyond mind, beyond the organization. So it's like dancing. If you ever watch great dancers, there's a leader and a follower. Now, you can switch positions, and many of us do during lovemaking. But more often than not, we're either the leader or the follower. More often than not, in the sexual occasion, I'm the masculine. And so that's my sexual essence. Okay. So we have an essence. And, Deida said there's some people who are equally on both sides. I found a couple of people, and the way that I look at that is there's people that can literally fall in love with a man or fall in love with a woman. I found more women who can do it than guys who can do it. Mm-hmm. And so someone who can fully inhabit one side or the other on every level. That's rare, but that exists. Okay? Now, we have energetic polarities with everything. Yeah. Like you and I have an energetic polarity as we look at each other. Mm-hmm. You have an energetic polarity with your puppy who's wandering around. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have an energetic polarity with the pen that you're writing with. I have an energetic polarity with my cup of tea. When there's an energetic polarity between a masculine person and a feminine person, there's an awareness of that. And that's an erotic polarity. Sometimes it's pleasurable, sometimes it's not. Okay? It depends on the energy. Okay? Now, for me, as a more masculine person, part of what I want to do is I want to provide safety all the time for anybody in my presence. And we talked about that in terms of the warrior archetype. the warrior archetype is a very pleasurable thing to people who have a more deep masculine essence. And so when I'm in the presence of a woman, like I'm in the presence of you, okay? I want you to understand that you are a beautiful woman, okay? I want you to feel my understanding of that, but I want it to not feel icky. I want it to feel like enlivening for you, okay? And it's my job to adjust that level of erotic polarity with you. And no excuses, that's my job. Okay? And I take that very seriously. Now, that awareness of that energy and that adjusting it is the art. You say, what makes it art? Okay, well, that energetic flow is like dance. Like dance is an art. And it's happening all the time. And it's, it's beautiful. Now, every once in a while, you screw up, okay? I mean, I swim at Los Baños pool by the harbor, right? Okay, so I was swimming one time, and I pulled up in the end of the lane, and there's this gorgeous woman in this beautiful green bikini, okay? That just happens to be a form that lights my eroticism up. I looked at her, and I couldn't help myself. I said, God, I love your suit. And I could feel her recoil. I went, oh, Keith, yuck. I pushed too far, okay? The grossest example of that is a woman walks by, and some guys are laying concrete, and they go, like that, okay?
Whistle.
And so I lost my presence for a moment. She was so radiant, like, I lost it and complimented her bathing, what I shouldn't have, So that's an example. Now, most of the time, if something like that happens, I'll appreciate her energy, really worship it. I see the goddess coming through women, and I go, yeah, I offer you I surrender. I offer you. It's recognizing the sacred quality of that, but to the extent it serves the highest good. Okay, and the women that I work with, they do the same thing. I mean, you've done it. All beautiful women know how to be less visible in certain situations. They know how to be less accessible. They project it through their body, their expression, their energy, and they know how to be more visible and more desirable. And they can project it through their eyes and their face and so on. Humans have the most expressive face of any creature ever. And there's a reason for that, because we're always communicating. Our expressions change every 0.3 of a second. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And that means there's a little bit of a state change. Now, when we're aware of stuff like polarities, like erotic polarities, we can then, awareness regulates. Okay? And so this organizes a lot of things. Particularly, it organizes our motivation systems. There've been studies around what people want. And often what people want is what the culture tells them they should want. And that quite often isn't what they really want. For instance, when I was an adolescent, the big deal guy, sex guy, was James Bond. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I was a hippie, right? I mean, love sex and rock and roll. And so the culture says, God, you want to go be all promiscuous and be all poly and party and so on. My therapist was saying it, and I went, okay, but it never really felt comfortable to me, I got to say. So I tried heroically for, 15 years. And finally I was 31. I went, you know what? I'm monogamous. I don't like having sex with somebody unless I'm fully resolved. That's just me. And so what do I want? I want a secure relationship with someone where we can build a joyful sexuality with each other. And my wife, Becky, we were married at the time. We'd been together for a number of years. Said, sure, that sounds great. Because I finally went inside and found out what I wanted, not what the culture said I should want, but who I was.
But that can change.
Oh, yes, and it does change. But if, okay, so this culture is not generous about sexual
not
instruction.
Forgiving either.
Not forgiving. That there's nobody I've ever worked with who actually, well, I'm sure a few people have, most people I work with they go, I'm not normal sexually, because they have this internalized standard of what normal is. It's the peak of all the bell curves.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that they're a little bit on one side or the other on some bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, anal sex, whatever, semi-publics, I don't know. And they'll go, I'm not normal. And so something I have to teach people is that normal is just a statistical representation. What you're talking about is moral. That the culture has taught you that because of who you are sexually, you're a more immoral person than somebody who's different. And that's a cultural pathology. All cultures have strengths and weaknesses, and our culture has cultural pathology around sex. And most Christian cultures, Christianity has not historically been a pro-sex religion. Most cultures do that. Now, the positive part about that is that the sex drives are so strong. 25% of the murders in this country are love triangles, okay? And jealousy is a sex drive. The sex drives are so strong that the ancestral tribes had to get customs to help people regulate their sexuality so that they could be coherent groups. And so we need to have rules. It's necessary. But as you develop, what you discover is there's principles behind the rules. And your moral systems become more relativistic because they're going for the principles. They're not going for the black-white distinctions. And nowhere is that more important than with sex. And so in our sexual development, the interface between intimacy and sexuality, the interface between health and sexuality, the understanding of our own masculine and feminine aspects, and then our sexual essence, helps us be more explorers, where we discover who we are. And that process of discovery is both change, but also it's not exactly change, a lot of it. A lot of it is just facing who we are and celebrating it rather than morally judging it. Okay?
But again, that can change. Like who I was at 20 is different than who I was at 40.
Absolutely.
So,
and it should change.
Yeah.
How does it change? It changes in, we shape each other as partners, as lovers, as friends, and as people in a culture. And so as you liberate yourself from the external constraints and start saying, I want to be the healthiest version of me, the most joyful and turned on version of me, you find a lover and you go, I want to help you do that and have you help me do that. And then not only do we discover who we are, we can grow. And you personally can grow. And people go through stages. I've seen, for instance, this is very common in this culture now, as people begin to wake up more in late adolescence, 17, 18, 19, 20, they become more experimental sexually. They try different things. People try poly stuff. People try to have gay sex, all that kind of stuff. And, it's a lot of fun. So generally, as people begin to grow and pay attention to who they want to be, I've seen people more often than not move towards monogamy, particularly as they have children and family and stuff like that. Not always, but mostly. Okay. So there's a developmental progression. If a couple is lucky enough to be intentional about their erotic polarities, then the understanding, and this is what I suggest to couples, your lovemaking isn't something that just happens when you have sex. Lovemaking is happening all the time.
100%.
My wife and I are making love right now.
It's a relationship.
It's a relationship.
Like across the board, 24/7. It's like, but it's like dog training. You mentioned my puppy. I'm training him every moment of the day.
That's right.
It's not, we're just going to stop now and do the fetch lesson,
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that have been studied that have magnificent sex, they'll say that. They'll say the number one thing is trust. And what are you trusting? The second, so what you're trusting is the other person's going to do their best to do right with you and love you. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is deep empathy. The other person is going to understand me deeply and feel good about me. Okay. And then another one is flexibility. That we're going to be flexible in terms of supporting our love. And a committed relationship is a friendship, a love affair, and an ability to solve problems. And all those need intention. And we are not taught to have intentional love affairs. It's supposed to be all spontaneous. I'm sorry. Anybody that has kids knows that if you don't have premeditated sex, you're not having much sex. Okay. And that's not good for anybody. Well, it's good for some people, I guess. I mean, everybody has their own thing about what satisfies them, and that's fine. For people who want to be active sexually, if you're not intentional, then you can fall into bad habits of avoidance, of discomfort, of yearning. And the feminine is about yearning, okay? Yeah. If you feel like your masculine partner takes your yearning seriously and is motivated, to serve that yearning in any way, that's a really pleasurable thing for the feminine. If you do it sexually, if the feminine discovers her essence, her feminine essence, and then yearns from it, Deida used to say, what she really wants is to have sex with God, and she's settling for you. And I go, okay, I'll take that. Okay, that. And so what that does is then to the masculine has his own yearning. We have feminine, masculine sides. And so you look for ways of amplifying that erotic polarity. So the more that I give her my feminine and take my masculine role in the dance, and the more she surrenders to her feminine role, and that's pretty great. Every once in a while we switch.
Yeah.
She shifts into the masculine, I shift into the feminine. Okay. Well, that doesn't, some people, I guess it happens naturally. We had to learn how to do it. Okay. And when you learn how to do it, then you're adjusting. Now, still when that happens, when Becky adjusts and is more the director, the leader of the dance, I'm still the person that kind of has a larger structure in my mind as we do it. I'm still, kind of the more masculine person, but I'm feeling this happen, and I'm trying to regulate it around when it's going to light her up the most to be here, or it lights her up like that. Why? I'm a masculine person. I get off on that. Okay.
Yeah. Hey everybody, hope you're enjoying the show. I'm here with my friend Hannah of Sebe and Solus, my favorite new skincare company and self-care. For that matter, they have pet care stuff too. Hannah, your company has changed my life. Tell us about your pet care products, why they're natural and effective.
If it benefits our skin, it benefits the pet's skin and their hair. It's the ability of the oil serums that actually penetrate into animals' skin very quickly without leaving any residue or any oiliness or greasiness. And it helps with moisture and hydration of their skin, because sometimes when they go outside, they get these little bugs or wounds or scabs. And our product is designed to help them heal faster and reduce any sort of itching that causes on the animals.
A lot of times my dogs itch, so what I do is I give them a bath with natural shampoo, and then I put on some of that pet oil from Sebe and Solus, and it's great. It makes their fur soft. I think they kind of lick it a little bit because it is food grade, for God's sake.
Yes, totally. It's fine for them to ingest it as well.
Exactly, and like we always say, if it's on your skin, you're drinking it, so that's a good litmus test to see if whatever you're using is safe. And everybody, Hannah has offered us a discount code for you to try not only the amazing pet care line she has, but all her beautiful skin and body and self-care. They got bath salts and serums and stuff to help you sleep at night. Please try it out. Sebe and Solus, enter the special coupon code FITAMYTV10, all caps, at checkout, and you'll save 10%. It's not about quote unquote your ego then, because I know, like you mentioned with sex therapists, like I don't know, I've just heard that like it's like an ego thing, even for the female or feminine identified energy partner side, to want him to feel like he's getting pleasure from you, or you're giving him pleasure, and the idea was that's your ego trip. And it's like, well, no. And what I'm hearing you say is, for the feminine essence partner, that's actually just part of their being. It's not about, like, as in a bad thing, their ego. It's more just them being who they really are. Am I hearing you right? That's really interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Wow, that's cool.
I mean, that's,
yeah,
it's
liberating, because you don't judge yourself as much, like you're being selfish. Like, it's not about my ego. I really do want you to feel great,
Well, yeah, and when Meredith Chivers did this research on arousal systems, I love her research, and it's been replicated. So she had men and women like watch porn of all sorts, and she had their genitals hooked up to plethysmographs that measured blood flow, and she had a little knob where they would turn the knob when they felt turned on. And she found this. It was like there was this cornucopia of cool stuff that came out of this research. So here's one. One is that the guys, when they were looking at the more masculine people, when they were looking at the couples having sex, or the images, looked at the women's bodies. I mean, the male erotic main arousal system is, I see her, I want her.
Mm-hmm.
The guys will even respond to this shape on a wall. They'll go, huh?
The hourglass.
Yeah, the hourglass.
Wow.
The women, the more feminine people, were watching the guy's eyes, watching the women.
Oh.
Because there is an arousal system of, I am the goddess. I am the bringer of erotic light.
Are you seeing me?
Are you seeing me?
Wow.
And that's the turn on.
Yeah. So, but and likewise, to my point, it's not an ego trip for her to want that. It's okay. That's really interesting, Keith.
It's important to want that. It's important
Tell
to be
us
able,
why. Justify that more for us, so we can take our guilt out of it.
Well, God, it's when you're making love, if you're a feminine person, you're the embodiment of the goddess. Okay. And so we're taught, we're so shamed in this culture around our bodies.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what your body is. You're the goddess coming through. And, the guy is offering his devotion to the goddess erotically. And you need to be able to feel beautiful and sexy.
Yeah.
My wife, Becky's 72. I mean, she just doesn't have the body she had when she was 23. And I know that because we hooked up when we were 23.
Wow.
But she's there. She feels beautiful and sexy, when
awesome.
we're together. Okay. Partly because of my appreciation, partly because of her own liberation of that part of me needs to be celebrated, not suppressed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, women have an arousal system where the right guy at the right time feels the moment, just sweeps her off her feet and ravishes her. Okay. If you look in all the romance novels, which are the most popular books sold in the United States, if let's say there's 300 pages, go to page 150. On page 150, right in the middle of the book, they're in the kitchen or living room or outside in the meadow.
He just takes her.
Takes her.
Oh yeah, I knew what you were gonna say. He just takes her.
Now that probably comes, that's a real thing. It probably comes from millions of years ago when women were being forced, because women are smaller, 15% smaller and 15% weaker, that their body went into an erotic response when they were being forced so they wouldn't get injured. Okay. Oh. Because, men have been raping women forever. Mm-hmm. And so the women that had that reflex would survive more. They'd have less infections, they'd have less problems and stuff. Now, fast forward to 2022, some women, when they're raped, will have a response and they'll feel ashamed of it. And, when you tell them, look, that's just your body's essential defense against rape. But since we take all the drives and turn them into art, what we've learned, and 50% of women who are studied had a ravish me fantasy in the last 30 days.
50, okay. 50.
Yeah, 50. 50% of women.
I would think it'd be higher.
Well, that's because you probably have an intentional
I
sexuality.
was just going to say, whoops, I guess I revealed something there, but
Well, that's all right.
I think it's
Now,
pretty common.
here's another thing, couple of other things that Meredith discovered. So, you got the knob. This is how turned on I am. And you have the bathysmograph. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, okay. With the guys, 50% of the time when they turn the knob, hey, this turns me on. 50% of the time, the bathysmograph says, yeah, there's more blood flow here.
Yeah.
50% of the time, it wasn't. They thought they were turned on, and they probably were, but their body said, nah, not that much. Okay?
Really?
Yeah, 50% of the time. That's guys. Now, women, they turn the knob when they were turned on, and then they had the bathysmograph saying there's blood flow. They were only concordant 15% of the time. So what that said to the women is what turned them on is what they thought turned them on. And their body kind of does whatever it does. Okay. Now, here's the significance of that. The significance of that is, guys, when I was a kid, I was, I guess, a young man. If a woman was lubricating, guys, oh, she must be turned on. Well, look, if she's lubricating, her body is in an arousal state. What determines whether a woman is turned on is whether she experiences herself as turned on or not. Okay. So there's a non-concordance. It's a mental thing. Yeah. Now it's physiological also. But the thing about it is that thing about how I am with you, how am I managing the energies with you, is what's most important. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so to be able to have a couple use those energies creatively is we're going to arrange that. We're going to basically work the energies to ways that please us. And what matters is how pleased we are. Okay. And I trust you enough that I stop being pleased and I indicate it somehow, you will make an adjustment, and vice versa. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, it's just like in a dance that the person who's following is active. But, if she's being trolled too hard or you're pulling the arm too much, just a little thing to, be a little bit more gentle. And the guy gets it. Shh, that's great dancers do that. Okay. Now, so there's still that leader-follower dynamic, but with trust, with deep trust, deep communication, deep empathy, it turns more and more into art. Yeah, and respect, of course. Mm-hmm. That's why you're making love all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not like my wife believes that I'm in integrity only when I'm around her. Okay, wherever I am, if something happens, she knows Keith's going to do his best to do the highest good. Okay, it's not like she just lights up and it's just this free flowing channel of emotion when I'm around her. Wherever she is now, she's that now. Okay, and I believe that connection is it's hard to explain, but it's a mystical connection. Now, not everybody has that. Some people just have recreational sex. Some people really like to hook up and they have fun hooking up. I mean, they're hooking up.
Just a stage, like I said earlier, it's not who you are. It's just kind of trial and error, checking it out. And then you find out who you are by trial and error.
Yeah, and it might be also a kink. You might have a kink of, hey, it's fun to do the whole seduction, have sex with a new person thing. Okay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, if that's your kink and you're in a committed relationship, you can work with that energy with your partner, or you can work with that energy without your partner. If you work with that energy with your partner, you find ways of having that kink energy happen in ways that don't hurt either one of you. And it doesn't have to be having sex with other people. It might be pretending to have sex with other people. It might be telling each other stories. It might be fantasy. Mm-hmm. Or every once in a while people bring somebody else in, fine. If you're not doing it collaboratively with your partner, then it leads into a lot of the sexual dramas that fascinate all of us and that permeate society. It's why 25 to 45% of married men cheat on their wives at some point. 15 to 25% of married women will cheat on their husbands at some point.
And when you say cheat, is that sexual intercourse with someone else? Because, you can emotionally cheat.
Well, I think we're talking about penetrative sex with that study. I think that if we extend it to emotional cheating.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
No, just don't bother getting married.
Yeah. Well, You know, it's erotic polarities happen all the time.
Oh, yes.
You know what?
You don't have to act on them. I think it's the acting on it.
Yeah, right. You know, I'm not responsible for responding.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if I get mad, I'm not responsible for that guy got mad. I just discover myself mad. I'm responsible for what I do with it. You know, once Becky and I are walking down Henry's Beach near here in the parking lot, okay? So we were walking to go take a walk. So as we were walking, there are these 4 young women coming up. And 3 of them had on what you have on when you walk in a parking lot. You have on shirts or something on over your bathing suit. One young woman, all she had on was this tiny bikini. And she was just walking in the sun, happy as hell to be in the sun. She just didn't want, she just was too much fun being who she was. And it was like, you know, like a spotlight. There was so much erotic light coming from her. I just was struck by it. You know, it's like, like that. And Becky looked at me and she said, I understand.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, she didn't feel the light because she's a deeply feminine person, but she could feel me being like hit by it. And she didn't blame me for it.
Of course.
But that's how it works.
Yeah.
You know, and my job is, you know, to enjoy her for about 2 seconds and not to stare.
Yeah,
Staring is icky, but enjoying for 2 seconds is, sure. The goddess is in the parking lot and and I worship you.
She has many, many forms, that's for sure. Like you were walking next to one, but here comes one walking right at you. That's how it works, right? So, okay, so the masculine essence. Okay, I'm glad you clarified the difference between erotic polarity and energetic polarity. And the masculine essence is basically the presence, the providing, like he feels like, or I shouldn't say he, the masculine presence, okay. Yeah, it's the feeling of purpose, focus, being consistent, responsible, right. Whereas the feminine is it's just find this interesting. I'd like you to expand on this more, is the radiance. I think it's hard for people to kind of conceptual, because when you think of, okay, masculine focus, presence is, okay, like presence would be not being on your phone when you're talking to your partner, or just not watching TV while you're supposedly listening to her, or whatever, just, or in your brain thinking about work when you're supposedly, again, listening. Whereas when you say feminine radiance, can you just kind of expand on that a little more so we can really help wrap our brain around what that means and how, and I guess is a part 2 of the question, but how for a deeply naturally inclined person to be the masculine presence, they could think of it as to be truly who they are. It's almost like they know what to do. Focus on your purpose, being present, being responsible, blah, blah, blah. However, for the feminine, for her to be true to her true nature, one that identifies as more of the feminine, she has to focus on being more radiant. But I know, Keith, we're not talking about having your hair and nails done. So I'd like you to expand on the radiance concept. So for those people who do identify more as the feminine, how they can be more true to who they really are by being more radiant, which looks like what?
So there's a flow in nature. You know, in nature, sure, there's all survival of the fittest and everything, but basically nature is cooperating with itself all the time. And so the feminine is in those rhythms of nature and is allowing those rhythms to flow through her in a free flow of emotion. So I'm happy, I'm sad, I want to do this, so I do this, I want to do that, I do that. There's a flow. And the flow is connected to nature. It's connected to people. And her emotion is consistent with the present moment. And so a woman that's allowing that, or a person that's allowing that to happen, there's a light that comes from them. You feel it.
Yeah.
It feels like, when they asked Clinton about Monica Lewinsky, he said, she lit up the room. So her light distracted him, and he had a vulnerability in his character to engage in transgressive sex, and the rest is history, literally. Okay? And so the feminine is that free flow of emotion in harmony with nature. And when that happens, it's just light that comes from her.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it feels like sexy light.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just feels good.
Yeah.
Like there's a great movie with Mel Gibson. I know he's in everybody's shithouse now, but he made a lot of good movies.
Yeah, he did.
And one of them is What a Woman Wants, was the movie that he made.
Yeah, that was funny.
Okay, it was funny. And at the very end, he walks into an alley and there's this old Chinese woman. I mean, she must be 80. And she's sitting there in an alley, surrendered to joy. And that image, so I just felt such connection. I didn't want to have sex with her, but I just felt nourished by that feminine energy coming from her. Enough so that moment is the most significant moment of the movie for me.
Wow.
There's a certain kind of feminine wisdom that lights me up.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from masculine wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I trust feminine wisdom way more than I trust masculine wisdom. If I could vote to have it be a rule that the head of every country had to be a woman, I would vote for that. And I knew that some of them would be horrible leaders. I know that. But I think on balance, if every head of a country was a woman, everything would go easier around the world.
You see, that's such an interesting comment, because when I grew up, or as I was growing up, I should say, I'm still growing up, to be professional was kind of like the masculine, as in being objective and not letting your feelings or your mood affect how you're behaving at work and all that. And, traditionally women have been ostracized because, we're moody, and, the cycles and our periods and our hormones are all over the place, and the ups and downs, you don't know who you're going to come home to, and so this is very interesting to hear you say that you would prefer a female leader, because a lot of people would think, oh no, it wouldn't be predictable enough. She wouldn't be stable, because the masculine is often thought, as we said, the constant, the presence, the reliable, the rock. Like, they're not all like a leaf in the wind, whereas the feminine can be like a little butterfly and going to that flower, that flower, right? Oh, this one looks interesting, right? So can you expand on that? Because that's a very important concept, and one that I think has gotten a bad rap for females.
Well, of course. I mean, 10,000 years of patriarchy. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the patriarchy is being deconstructed now, which is great, but it's caused a lot of problems, particularly relating to women as property or objects, which is what had happened when agrarian society showed up. Tribal society, there's equal power and understanding of different roles in ways that, and choice. For instance, in the tribes that have been studied, they have about the same level of divorce that modern Americans have.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, why is that? Because anytime that you have women that have equal power, if somebody's a jerk, they don't want to live with them.
Yeah, and they don't use them for providing for their life. They're independent. Yeah. They can survive without them. They don't have to stay like women in the 40s. They couldn't vote, couldn't get a credit card, couldn't get a bank account, couldn't drive. I mean, you had to have a partner or you couldn't live.
1920 is when women could vote in the country.
Yeah, duh. I was 20 years ahead.
Yeah. 1920 women got the vote.
Century.
Yeah. So now the patriarchy, we now live in a society where there's equal power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, so what that means is that we're going less with defined roles and more with who people are. In terms of a woman being stable and all this other stuff. Being in the free flow of emotion doesn't mean that you lose your self-awareness.
Yeah.
As you develop more ability to self-observe. Okay? That capacity to self-observe is observing the states that you're in. Okay, So, we have a woman president and she's really premenstrual and Putin really acts like a complete asshole and she wants to go fucking shoot him. Okay. Okay. But if she made it that far, there's a part of her that observes that with humor, just like you just did.
Yeah.
And go, yeah, I'd like to go shoot him. But, also I'm feeling kind of shitty today. Guys feel shitty on days too, but they don't like surrender to it. They go, oh, what serves the highest good? And then what do they check with? They check with their wise self. Okay, my wise self is connected more to masculine wisdom. A more feminine person's wise self is connected more to feminine wisdom. And this is somewhat gender neutral. For example, Obama. Obama cared about everybody. So if he had to do something, he thought about the consequences to everybody involved. Clinton was like that too. I mean, when he had to bomb radar places in Iraq, he asked his generals, look, when's the time there's the least amount of people there? I want to hurt as few people as possible. So that was their feminine aspect speaking through them. That was feminine wisdom in addition to masculine wisdom. And so people that are leaders are people that are self-aware and, they'll feel whatever their impulses is or whatever their state is, but below the surface, there's something more enduring. And that's your wise self that's connected to your soul, that's connected to spirit. And it's connected to a higher morality of serving the highest good. And we're seeing more people around the world having that now. It's pretty great, actually.
Yeah, indeed. We're at just a very interesting point across the board in all the history of humanity, for that matter, not to be too histrionic, but just wanted to circle back on the feminine radiance aspect, because what struck me, Keith, is that I feel like it's almost like it's such a great thing for women to learn what you are teaching them today, because it gives them permission to, lack of a better word, be selfish, like take care of their self-care, because
exactly.
you can't be radiant and feel love and just pleasure in your body. You can't be radiating that energy out of you and be that light that's shining when you're burnt out, pissed off, tired, overworked, underfed, dehydrated, unrespected, unappreciated, like pick it, right? So to me, I just love hearing that, because it makes us us as a woman feel like, and it's probably pathetic now that I'm saying out loud, almost like permission, like, yes, nap. Yes, take a break.
Yeah, nap. Good.
Exactly. Like, not that I should need permission, but again, I just think I hear this a lot too. It's just women feel like self-indulgent, like it's a bad thing. Like, oh, I can't come take your class because I got it, and it's like for everybody else, right? So I just wanted to underscore that the feminine requires self-care in order to be true to her essence, is I guess what I'm trying to say. To be radiant, which is not only what's going to make her feel self-actualized and expressing herself accurately and fully, but also what I learned from your work is that radiance not only attracts, but nourishes the male, the masculine.
That's exactly right.
So please tell us about that. So it's like you're doing your partner a favor when you're doing that, because he needs you to do that, because he's attracted to it and it feeds him.
Yeah. One of the first of all, yes. Second of all, the forms of work in this world have come from the patriarchy, so they're kind of more masculine.
Yeah.
And Google did this interesting thing in Japan. They said, look, we're going to give everybody a 32-hour work week, and we're going to make meetings only a half hour, and you can't have more than 5 people in a meeting. Okay, so that go and now go for it. So they did that. So a year later, the amount of work that group did went up 43%.
Their productivity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why? They could adjust what they were doing to who they were, right?
Nice.
They didn't have as much rigid stuff. Mm-hmm. So I have no problem. If you have to take a nap, I take naps. Why? Well, I need naps more at 72 than I did at 22, but I get a lot done. So the idea of shifting a form to how you best serve, and that's what serves the collective more, Now that's a new idea. I have a friend in Brazil, Marcelo Cardoso, calls it meta management. And when he goes and consults with firms, he said, look, first of all, there's a lot of stuff we want from this business. Part of it is profit, but part of it is we want the welfare of every single person. Okay. And also we want to serve the planet. Okay. So we want a corporation to take care of all three of those things. And when he helps people organize, he says, well, what are your gifts and do you enjoy doing the most? Let's see if we can find a place in this company where you can do the stuff that you enjoy the most. Okay? And so that's how he helps organizations. There's lots of other stuff they do too, but it's a new way of understanding how we move through the world, that honoring different people having different capacities and so on. But on a more personal level, when the transition into parenthood happens, it puts a lot of stress on the erotic polarities of a couple. I mean, she's just gone through this incredible thing. God. I mean, I know childbirth is joyful and everything, but boy, it really is hard on you. And especially now, because women in the United States, in the West in general, are having children much later. And so, their bodies aren't quite as primed for them. And so John Gottman noticed, he did a study. This is a guy that does a lot of research up north in Seattle, one of my favorite couples researchers. He researched these couples and he found out that 3 years after the first baby was born, the couples were doing, 70% of the couples were doing worse as a couple.
Wow.
There were sex problems, there was more arguments,
wow,
there was more dissatisfaction. They just weren't doing as well as a couple, except 3 years later. But then he said, okay, all right. So he studied the 30% that were doing better. They're obviously doing something different.
Smart guy.
Study
what you want, not what you don't want.
Yeah, right. What are they doing different? What are they doing differently? So he found that, one, they were getting more attuned to each other. Men find their partners really erotically attractive the first year after the birth of the child, and women, their hormones shift them. They feel less sexual urgency. It takes a while to come back. All that kind of stuff. So the couples are doing better. They redefine sex as something that was more of a flow, more dealing with affection into sensuality, into eroticism, active and intentional. They got more sensitive about when you need me. Oh, I can see when you need me. The answer is yes. Not a yes, it's a happy yes. I wrote a blog on this once. If you're not going to give a happy yes, then just fucking say no. Because an unhappy yes is a wasted, because it doesn't make anything good happen. So if you're going to say yes,
I like that.
My wife is preparing our backyard. We're doing a memorial service for my brother-in-law who died a while ago. And I said, between 11:30 and 4, I'm available for whenever you want to move stuff around. She needs me to help her move stuff around. And I said, and I'll do it happily, no matter what you're interrupting. And she said, okay. And she knows that I will, because if it's not a happy yes, then don't do it. Okay? And so they taught that. They taught the turning to each other. They taught being intentional and so on. They taught that for a weekend. Okay, it was like 2 or 3 days. It wasn't forever. So they taught that to a bunch of couples, and they checked out 3 years later. 3 years later, 70% of the couples were doing better as a couple, and 30% were doing worse. They reversed it with 1 weekend of teaching people about loving each other better as friends and lovers after the transition into parenthood.
Okay, and what were some of the key things they taught? You said being more intentional, other than the happy yes.
When somebody wants your attention, give it to them. The answer is yes.
What if you're busy?
Okay. One of the greatest things that's ever been invented in media is the pause button. It really is. Okay. So say I'm watching a football game. Okay. I like to watch football occasionally. Becky walks into the room. All right. So if I'm really enjoying the football game, my first reaction is a little flash of irritation.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time. You're interrupting.
Mhm.
Okay. But that's an involuntary response. And this is true for everybody. If you're in a flow state, somebody interrupts it, that's irritating. If a
Yeah.
kid's doing a painting, a 4-year-old's doing a painting, really involved in it, and you say, oh, good painting, he gets irritated. You interrupted his flow state. Okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel a little irritation, but I know what's happening. I put pause. Okay, then I turn to my wife and I tell myself, whatever it is that she's coming in here for, it's important. I go, so what? At that point, she's got my presence. She's got my sense of humor.
But that's when you're watching a thing that can be paused. What if you're just busy? Like you can't just drop everything and be like, what would you like, honey? And give your undivided attention. I mean,
if that's happening,
really, yeah.
The response is no. Usually with a couple that's attuned, that happens less than you might think because you can tell.
They probably know don't approach when you're juggling a million things. Okay.
Well, what characterizes healthy people, and there is such a thing as healthy people. Healthy people are adaptive and flexible.
Nice.
And they're self-aware, and they self-correct. They learn from their experience. Yeah. So, say when she's doing the dishes or he's doing the dishes, the other one comes up and starts, hugging him. They go, I don't like you doing that when you do the dishes. Okay. Now, what happens if the guy keeps doing it like 20 more times? She starts getting really irritated with that guy. Mm-hmm. What happens if he goes, oh, she doesn't like me to do that when you do the dishes? Say he's a curious guy, which is really helpful. He goes, oh, when do you like it? Well, I actually like it when I'm standing outside looking at the garden. He goes, oh, I got that now. So he doesn't do it when she's doing the dishes and when she's standing outside. He goes up and kind of gives her a hug and she goes, oh, that's nice. They adapt. So over time, we learn what lights someone up and shuts them down. And also we get less pissed off because we know the other person's motivated. If they do something that irritates us, you go, okay, we let them know and we know that's important to them.
Yeah. So communicate. Well, I think, what this reminds me of too, is like when, I've been studying and I know you've got a book coming out on trauma or maybe you already have one. Yeah. Okay.
I got a rough draft done, but it'll be a few months before.
Great. Well, you're going to have to come back for that because trauma is huge. Everyone should check out my episode 74 where I really went into trauma and my experience with and then it was a little bit of a book review of When the Body Keeps the Score, that.
Oh yeah, I love that. I met Bethel Banner.
Really? Okay, you're definitely going to have to come back on the show for that. But what I was getting at is one thing I've been learning about our feelings, and hence the name of my show, Awakening Aphrodite, because I lived the first half of my life very much identified as a female person, very much feminine. However, my mindset was masculine. And so I'm bringing the Aphrodite feminine back online in my life. And in my deep dive of this the last several years, Keith, what I've learned is sometimes we don't feel our feelings at the moment because it's not safe or we judge them or whatever it may be, right? It's not appropriate even, But one thing I've learned is, and please, of course, correct me on this if you don't agree, is okay, if it isn't safe or appropriate or anything to emote and feel those feelings, is to tell yourself you will feel them at another time. Like right now, it's not okay to feel this. Like you're the president, the female president who wants to kill Putin because he's an a-hole. She doesn't act on it, but maybe she feels that anger in her body at another time, lets her body emote it so it doesn't get stuck there. And it passes through, or like for me, like a real deep sadness, like, okay, I'm starting to feel this real sadness come up. I'm in a meeting or on a podcast and I've got to get it together or I'm going to lose my stuff. So rather than abandon myself and just override it and don't feel it and just, sugarcoat it and go right over it and then medicate myself later on food or whatever it is, because I'm not dealing with my repressed emotions, I would tell myself, okay, you can't feel this right now, little Amy, but I promise you we're going to feel it later. We'll get ourselves in a situation where you can express that. So what I'm hearing you say now with a partner is almost the same thing. I think of, well, maybe it's not I can't talk to you about that right now, honey. I am watching the football game or whatever is very important. But can we, almost like rain check, can we talk about it after dinner or when I'm done? That's like, you maybe tell them, like, I can't right now because of an impractical life situation, but I'm not blowing you off. You're important to me. Can we schedule a time type thing?
So first of all, there's just a lot.
Yeah, I just threw a lot at you.
Well, there's a lot of wisdom there to unpack.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, so I agree.
So all my hard work's not for nothing. I'm learning. Am I actually learning and evolving, Keith? I hope
Well,
so.
you're a teacher.
Not easy.
Not
easy.
When you teach, boy.
You have to learn.
First of all, yes, the ability to self-observe.
Yeah.
Now, at least the Deida system, that's a masculine ability. They have a part of you that's self-aware of how you move through the world. And absolutely, we regulate our emotions all the time, both consciously and unconsciously. And it's true that there are environments where there's an impulse that will not serve the highest good if you allow it.
Yeah. And
so then that self-observation turns into a response. Now, the response can be shame. I'm what an awful person I am. Okay. Or it can just be, oh, that's not appropriate for this emotion, this moment. I need to regulate it.
Yep.
I was at the gravesite of my beloved Uncle Jim once. Okay. And he was a Baha'i, and a very famous Baha'i. And I have my own spirituality.
What's that?
A Baha'i is a religion that was developed in the 19th century by a guy named the Bab and his son, a guy named Baha'u'llah. And it's a big deal. There are Baha'i people all around the world. It's one of the few religions that came into modernity that has as its basis the equality of men and women, the brotherhood of man, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we used to argue about, he's kind of a fundamentalist Baha'i. You kind of have to do the Baha'i stuff to be able to really get the good afterlife stuff. And I go, I don't think so, Jim. So on. So we were at his graveside, and he used to sing this song, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. He used to do it for the kids.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so somebody was playing that on a guitar, and I was thinking of Jim up there. If there's any consciousness after death, then you pay attention to your own funeral, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I have to die to find out. But I thought to myself, I told you so, Jim, because I'm certain that on the other side, it doesn't really matter whether you're Baha'i or a Catholic or a Buddhist or whatever, like you're on the other side. And when I was thinking that, I told you so, I had this huge urge to start laughing, and I went, no, don't do that, Keith. That is not appropriate in this group. Everybody on the graveside of Uncle Jim while they're playing out the happy, you know it. So I just regulated it. And that's a quality. By the way, it's both a feminine and a masculine quality.
Okay.
Good example. You're a mother. You're tired. You're wasted. You've just been sleeping for 3 hours and your baby cries and needs you. And you wake up and you go, oh, God damn. You get pissed. Then you go, oh. Mm-hmm. And you remind yourself it's babies. And then you go do the baby thing. Okay. What have you done? You've regulated that flash into an appropriate expression. Mm-hmm. Okay. And there's a guy named Alan Shore who's one of the fathers, maybe the main father of interpersonal neurobiology, that really relies heavily on attachment theory and neuro research. And he basically says that learning how to regulate emotions is what marks all development. And he's got a good case for that. And so we all get better at it if we grow. Why? Because we can observe what's going on with us, and we can socially reference the world, and then we can adjust to what serves the highest good. Now, that's a very masculine activity. There's purpose. I want to serve the highest good. There's that self-observation part of it, and then there's that adjustment. Okay, but also, if you're a feminine person and you're doing that, part of what serves the world is whether I need to be letting more light out or less light out. I need to be caring for this person or setting a boundary for this person. And then you care for them as you do from your feminine heart, or you set a boundary from your feminine heart. One of the most common problems with parents is she has looser boundaries and he has tighter boundaries, and they argue about it rather than learn from each other. And so they come to see me and I go, look, both of those things are good for your kid. But what we want is to help your child thrive. And so let's find out who your child is, and let's find out what kind of just care and permission they need and what kind of boundaries they need to thrive. And that's different for every child. And you have your own ways of doing this. Let's find what's great about those and what doesn't work, and let's grow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's just how we've always been. You know, that back and forth between the masculine and the feminine accelerated evolution by an order of magnitude. You know, when male and female happened, all of a sudden, biological evolution.
Creation. Yeah.
Oh, God.
The two polarities. For sure.
And then when people started, then when the pair bond happened, because that really is masculine and feminine in a way that wasn't existing really. There are only 3% of animals pair bond. And human beings are the only ones that at least half the time don't cheat if they have an opportunity. I mean, all other animals do.
Really? Yeah. And from what I understand, we're the only mammals that are sexually responsive our whole lives, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Our whole lives and all the time. You know, you cannot tell if, well, right. But, you cannot tell if a woman is available,
right, by
looking at her. If you're a guy and you see her, now guys can tell on subtle levels. Yeah. Guys can, if you give a t-shirt to a guy of a woman, right before she ovulates, he's more attracted to that woman. Mm-hmm. He might not know why.
Because of her pheromones.
Yeah, the pheromones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff. But so yes, there's a whole in evolutionary psychology, there was a whole controversy about coevolution. A lot of the more sexist Darwinists said, well, women evolved to be beautiful to attract men. But, men didn't evolve to be more attractive to women. Not so. If you start looking at male physiology over the years, there are shifts in the way that men's genitals are shaped. They were clearly shaped by what women liked. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole thing you can do with penis size and testicle size.
Really?
That has that you can see that evolutionary shift. So in other words, not only that, how men behaved has evolved in response to what women find enjoyable. Okay, it's a form of self-domestication, and the human, humans. I know there's a lot of damage going on right now, but we're way less violent than, say, chimpanzees, who are super violent.
Yes, they are. As are all animals, Keith. I saw 2 birds fighting outside my deck today. Two birds that are no bigger than my hand.
Yeah, little dinosaurs.
Going at it over
food. We have evolved towards more compassion and less violence. And weirdly, I mean, it's easy to be pessimistic, but there's less war in this world. There's less murder in this world. There's less poverty in this world than there's ever been before historically. There's more care in this world. There's more depth of consciousness. And as people have opportunities like this, watching this podcast and other things, to have new perspectives, a new perspective plus a changed action evolves you a little bit.
Superpower.
And so we can continue to evolve as individuals throughout our lifetime. And as we go higher on these developmental lines, what marks the growth on the self line, the interpersonal, psychosexual line, is more compassion and deeper consciousness and more authenticity.
Yes.
Okay, so whatever my masculine and feminine aspects are, hey, they're mine. My sexual essence, that's mine. And how it interferes with the world, interfaces with the world, that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's a complex responsibility. It's demanding, but it's my job. And if I'm a more masculine person, I'm responsible to make that work. And if I'm a more feminine person, I'm responsible to make that work. And as we take on that responsibility of authenticity, this is another great thing about the modern age. People are encouraged to be more their unique selves and less encouraged to conform to external standards. And so there's a lot of people that are creating new forms just because there's room for it to happen, particularly in Western society.
Acceptance. Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's the integral age that's happening around us. I think that there's a shift in consciousness around the world that's moving to a more world-centric, more life-centric, more individual liberation-centric world. And those things are driving the evolution of humans right now. And that's being accelerated by the threats of climate change and war and that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's such an interesting perspective.
My father, Mark Newkirk, used to say that if you could turn off all human thought, the default would be harmony. Within each one of us, at our core, is true perfection. Old programs, limiting ideas about ourselves, and stress cause us to see a different picture. If we can get back to a more natural state of being and begin to see how amazing the Creator has made us, we can see more of our own perfection, heal, and release old programs that do not serve us. Coherent music, nature, and technologies like the core harmonizer that use frequencies of music, light, and sacred geometries can help bring us back to our peaceful selves. When we are in a greater state of peace, we can then begin to access more of our own amazing innate abilities. Abilities like self-healing capabilities, perceptive capabilities, and intuitive capabilities, and even more.
Everybody, that was my friend Ross Newkirk. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? This is why his products are on my website. I think it speaks for itself. I know you can feel his level of consciousness. That's the mindset and intention behind the creation of these products. That's what makes them unique. I know if you listen back to what you just heard, you will feel what I'm talking about. And that's why intention of creation is so important. So I'm so grateful that Ross has shared his technology with us at a discount. You can get yours at my website under the recommended products page. Enter the code FITAMYTV10, save 10%. This is the kind of present to tell people to get you, something that's going to change your life, elevate your consciousness, raise your vibration, and increase your energy, your calmness, your peace of mind, decrease stress. I mean, who in the world doesn't need a core harmonizer, right? Thanks, Ross and his team. Go get yours today and let us know what you think. Wow. I just wish we had more time. Before I let you go, though, if you would kindly expand a little bit on the idea of, because again, Awakening Aphrodite, my show is about helping us, the female identified person in particular, bring out more of her feminine self.
Good.
Yeah. So you had mentioned projecting your strong, radiant female light, which requires self-care, is what I added.
It sure does.
Yep. But still setting boundaries. This is another huge one. I had a great show with Dr. Sarah Gilman. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a giant in boundary setting, amazing. Learned so much from her. I've got like 5 of her books. Because I've had trouble with boundaries my whole life. I call myself a reformed or reforming people pleaser, depending on the day. Yep. So how, Keith, can we project that strong feminine radiant light, but still have our feminine boundaries? And I think you even said, setting feminine boundaries, which was really interesting, because I don't think of boundaries as being feminine. It's more like, okay, I'm a doormat, I'm a feminine, I give to everybody. The feminine takes care of everybody, nurtures, community, everyone else, but no, boundaries need to be set. So please help us with that.
Well, first of all, we all come from our own inner deepest core of self. And I believe that we have a wise self starting very young. I think you can hear 4 and 5-year-olds say incredibly wise things. Why is that?
Yep.
there's some part of them that just integrated to a high frequency, a high level of complexity. So I think that's always there. And what that does is it goes through our personalities. It goes through our type of person, our masculine and feminine type, our enneatype, if we're doing the Enneagram and so on. And all this stuff is acted out in human relationships. Now, humans relate in various ways. They can relate, they can be dependent on each other. One person really has to take care of another, like an infant and a mother or somebody who's sick. They can be independent, where they can just take care of themselves and be appropriately, I'm packing by myself. I need to take care of myself, for instance. They can be counter-dependent, which is, I'm not going to receive help because I'm going to pretend that I can do everything myself. Counter-dependent, by the way, is unhealthy because you're not receiving health appropriately. They can be codependent, which is they give to someone inappropriately in a way that causes damage rather than serves the highest good. And that's unhealthy. Okay, so counter-dependent, codependent, unhealthy. Dependent, sometimes healthy, sometimes not. Independent, sometimes healthy, sometimes not. And then interdependent. And interdependent is what we are with each other. All of us are interdependent. And it's our job. Now, what's healthy interdependence? Interdependence is that you arrange to be appropriately independent, appropriately dependent, appropriately interdependent, and you don't allow yourself to be codependent. You don't allow yourself to be counterdependent. And that not allowing yourself is setting boundaries. It's a boundary. If I break my leg and say, I'll just wait for it to get better, I set a boundary for myself. I go, Keith, go to a doctor and have him set that leg. Just shut up about letting. Okay, I like that. Okay. I'd be appropriately dependent on the doctor. Okay. In other words, we're observing ourselves, and the boundaries that we set help us to be in that healthy zone. And if we shift into that unhealthy zone, codependent zone or counterdependent zone, codependence is big because women are taught to nurture and are programmed to nurture. I mean, this is not just cultural. When women look at a guy, they're evaluating him with more social circuits than when a guy looks at a woman. Okay, why? She's wired to care more about people. It's why women see better in the dark than men, smell better, taste better. Why? They have better. They multitask better.
They can hear better too.
They hear better also. All these things better. Why? Because they were always referencing people they had to take care of, like kids and stuff. Women get stressed. They have an instinct to go talk to other women. Guys get stressed. They want to go by themselves. And in tribal society, that protected people because angry men should be by themselves. And if a woman's stressed, go get some support from somebody else. All that runs off of your capacity to listen to your heart and set a boundary. And people mistake, they think boundaries is just don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. There are inclusive boundaries as well as exclusive boundaries. An exclusive boundary is don't yell at me. Wow. An inclusive boundary is, when you come home, I really like it if you look me in the eye and smile at me.
Wow.
An inclusive boundary is, this is what I want more of. Please. Okay. That's an inclusive boundary.
I like that.
Yeah. So you do the exclusive boundaries that serve the highest good. Don't yell at me. You do the inclusive boundaries that serve the highest good. Just make sure.
That's awesome. I never heard of that. That's really, really helpful.
Yeah. Most people, when they talk about boundaries, don't realize that those adjustments go in both directions. And both of them are informed by your heart. And so if your heart is the ultimate authority and you set those boundaries, everything's going to go better. It's harder for women because women are taught to take care of people and go, sure, I can make it easier for you and so on. And that's fine up to a point. And there's a lot of guys that are like that too, by the way.
So
there's a lot of
where does self-love come in then and setting boundaries, either inclusive or exclusive?
Well, first of all, let's talk about what self-love is.
Okay, good idea.
All right. So when we're in the third trimester, we're in utero.
Yeah.
We are literally one with the universe. And our brain is wiring that. one with the universe. That's what's called an implicit memory. An implicit memory is a memory that causes you to have a reaction and a state and an impulse, but it doesn't feel like a memory. Okay, so then we are the universe. We are love. We are one with everything. Because being one with is a form of definition of love. That's one of Deida's definitions I like. Okay, the child's born. The child's born, and there's a great parent too. And the child basically has this experience of I am loved. There is love coming towards me. There's no consciousness in that child yet, but I am loved. I'm loved. I'm loved. 12 months old, kid starts wandering around, can feel separate from mom, can feel ashamed of, disapproved of, gets into things, hears no every 8 or 9 minutes. Now, kid does a mistake, and the mother goes, stop it. Now, at that moment, the kid relates to mom like a stranger and freaks out, feels a little bit ashamed, stops what they're doing, freezes. And then she picks him up and says, you just don't hit the cat, like that. But what the kid learns is I am loved conditionally. Mm-hmm. Right? 3 years old, a kid begins to 2.5, 2 to 3, develops a sense of self and is observing themselves. Well, now they see when they're following the rules or not, and they start loving themselves conditionally.
Oh.
Okay. But so you keep growing, and then you grow to be more world-centric, and you do your contemplative practice, and you begin to feel one with spirit. And as you do that, you begin to feel more of a sense of being part of everything, until finally, at some particular point, you go, I am everything. And you have this just delicious sense of unity. I am everything. I am love. You're back to where you were when you were in the 3rd trimester. And that's the progression of self-love throughout a person's lifetime. Now, I encourage people to find whatever part of that process they're in, and let's just enhance it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you enhance it by setting boundaries exclusively, don't do this. Sometimes you enhance it by setting inclusive boundaries. I'd like more of this, please. Sometimes you enhance it by doing more practices that connect you to spirit, and feeling spirit come through you. When you do these shows, there's something coming through you, Amy. It's not just Amy doing the show. You're channeling something else, and it's not.
I certainly hope so, because otherwise it wouldn't be that good.
That's right. and whatever that thing is, there's a feminine quality to it because I can feel it. Okay.
Oh, cool.
All right. So what does that do? That helps grow your feminine. Okay. Grow you towards that sense of I am love. Again.
And to be more of who I really am, which is probably why I enjoy doing the show, because I'm being more of who I authentically am.
Yeah. And everybody, one thing is if you don't experience yourself as beautiful, you just haven't gone deep enough. Because if you keep going deeper at some point, oh God.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to meditate on that one. That's deep. Wow.
So that's how self-love fits into this.
That is, wow. I did not expect that tremendous answer. I'm so grateful. I am in a pretty great spirit. Nothing gets screwed up with this recording, because that was brilliant. And boy, do I need to go back and listen to it. Oh, Keith, you are truly remarkable. If I didn't think so the first time you're on the show, done deal. And of course, now you're coming back for when the trauma book comes out. So you're incredible. Thank you so, so much for sharing your life experience, your deep wisdom, your loving heart, your masculine presence, everything else. I wish I could keep you longer. I'm going to let you go. But before we do, anything else that you feel just needs to be said today for the audience?
Well, I think awakening Aphrodite is leading us into the integral age. I think that there's time for the feminine to be more ascendant in all of us. And the men that I admire the most, their feminine aspect has been integrated in a way that makes them more beautiful. Okay?
Absolutely. And relatable.
Yeah, like Brad Pitt's a great example of that. Very masculine, but his feminine, shines from him. Mm-hmm. And so our birthright is to be ourselves. Yes. And when we're thoroughly ourselves, there's something wonderful that we feel, and all of us can have that experience.
That's authentic.
Whatever the problems are, just get some help and work on them. But as you're doing that, what eventually happens is you wake up one day and you go, God, I'm living a happy ending at the beginning of something wonderful. And that's what we can all do if we just receive influence and continue to grow.
Tremendous, just tremendous. I'm going to put a pen in that. Dr. Keith Witt, thank you so much. Where can people find you? You have online courses, you've got books, you've got your blog. Please share with them where they can go right now, get on your email list and learn more.
Yeah, go to drkeithwitt.com. You can sign up for my website. It doesn't cost anything. And you'll get a video every week for about 12 weeks and some other content. The 8 books that I've published so far, you can get links to them on my website or go to amazon.com. The one on relationships is Loving Completely. Shadow Light is about working with shadow. Yeah,
I've
there
got
you go.
Loving Completely right here, everybody.
Right there.
Awakening Aphrodite, Fit Amy TV on YouTube. Loving Completely.
Loving Completely.
All marked up. Look at all the notes and tabs and crazy. It's like
And then I got a lot of blogs and talks and so on. I had a web series for a while called Therapist in the Wild, where there's a lot of things I felt really strongly about, so I just ranted about them.
Hysterical.
I know. I really enjoyed it, and then it was just too much to keep going. But anyway, there's a bunch of those. So go on my website. All that stuff's there. Enjoy it. Learn from it.
And your courses,
get my
your
books and
courses.
read them. And
yep.
So there you go.
And all that'll be in the show notes, everybody. If you're not able to write that down or remember per se, don't worry. Just scroll down under the podcast where the show is listed. So, wow. Again, check out his previous episode on the show, and can't wait to have you back on. Everyone, I know this was helpful for you. Please share the show to help other people, and maybe you even want to subscribe so you get the next time Dr. Witt comes back on the show. And if you want to support me, leave a review. That would be just tremendously, gratefully appreciated by me as a podcast host. That's kind of our bread and butter, is people subscribing and leaving reviews. So it means a lot. It only takes 5 seconds. Anyway, thank you again, Keith. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Much love to everybody.
Okay, yep. Much love to everybody. See you next time, everyone.
Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's amyfournier.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also Fit Amy TV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.